Arrival in a medieval town. Dusk on the road. Imagine the sun dipping low as you approach the outskirts of a medieval town. The sky is painted in shades of dusky purple and soft gold, the last light of day glimmering on stone walls that encircle the settlement. A cool evening breeze carries the earthy scent of tilled fields and the faint sweetness of wood smoke, curling from countless hearth fires preparing for nightfall. You make your way along a rutted dirt road toward the town's main gate, shoulders weary from travel, yet you feel a gentle anticipation building for the warmth and refuge that await inside. The town gate stands open, but will soon be closed for the night. A single guard lounges there, more relaxed than alert. He wears a rumpled gambeson bearing the town's emblem, a leaping white hart, and rests a spear lazily at his side. At this hour, he seems more concerned with keeping warm than enforcing law. He returns your approach with a tired but courteous nod. You pass under the archway into the town, your boots echoing softly on the cobbles beyond. Within, narrow lanes wind between half-timbered houses, whose upper stories lean out as if to whisper secrets across the street. Many windows are already aglow with flickering amber light. Through cracks in shutters you glimpse cozy interiors, where families finish their evening meal by the hearth. The murmur of voices carries on the cooling air, a mother chiding a child to settle down, an occasional laugh from behind a tavern door, punctuated by the bark of a distant dog. From one home comes the soft melody of a lullaby being sung to a baby, the gentle tune briefly audible before a wooden shutter closes and hushes it again. All around, the little town is bedding down, the day's labor done, and the comforts of night begun. As you navigate through the dimming light of the main street, you pass a closed baker's stall here and a public water trough there. The aromas of the town at dusk drift around you. There is the yeasty, inviting smell of bread lingering from the bakehouse, still warm from the afternoon's bake. The tang of peat and oak smoke wafts from chimneys, carrying hints of savory stews and roasted meats from various kitchens. Puddles from an earlier rain shower reflect the glints of newly lit lanterns hanging above doorways. Here and there, a few latecomers scurry home before curfew, clattering softly over the damp cobbles. In the distance, a bell begins to toll, a slow, solemn sound that signals the onset of the nightly curfew. With each heavy peal, the streets grow a little more hushed. Doors thud closed and iron bolts slide into place behind them, as the town prepares to surrender itself to the gentle governance of night and rest under the watchful eye of local law. Pulling your travel-worn cloak tighter around your shoulders, you follow a side lane that you've been told leads to the town's tavern. The promise of a warm fire, a hearty meal, and friendly faces quickens your step just a bit, despite your fatigue. Rounding a final bend, you spot it. A two-storied building, slightly larger than those around it. Its upper floor jetted out over the street on wooden beams. From a wrought iron bracket on that second floor hangs a painted wooden signboard, swaying gently in the evening breeze. By the light of a shielded oil lamp mounted nearby, you make out the emblem on the sign, a white stag, a hart, with proud antlers against a field of deep green. Even if you could not read the flowing script beneath, the image itself tells you the establishment's name, the White Hart Tavern. Hanging signs with pictorial symbols are the customary way to identify taverns and inns, a welcome sight for any traveller seeking lodging in a strange town. The building looks inviting against the gathering dark. Its ground floor walls are timber and daub, whitewashed but stained by years of weather and smoke. Diamond-paned lattice windows, small and a bit fogged with soot, glow with golden light from within. Through one slightly open shutter, you catch the flicker of firelight and the passing silhouette of someone moving inside. From under the heavy oak door leaks a slender beam of warm light, and with it wafts the mixed, muted sounds of a busy tavern evening. Distant laughter, the faint strains of a lute, the clink of pottery mugs. Just outside the tavern, you pause for a moment to take in the scene. A few other late arrivals are about on the street. Farther down the lane, a man leads a cart toward the livery stable, and a pair of townsfolk share a quiet goodnight before parting ways to their respective homes. The tavern's own small stable, attached to the building's rear, emits the soft sounds of horses settling in for the night. A gentle snort, the rustle of hay as a stable hand pats down a mare's flank. You gently rub the nose of your own faithful horse, who has carried you many miles today. The poor animal is drooping arrival in a medieval town. Dusk on the road. Imagine the sun dipping low as you approach the outskirts of a medieval town. The sky is painted in shades of dusky purple and soft gold, the last light of day glimmering on stone walls that encircle the settlement. A cool evening breeze carries the earthy scent of tilled fields, and the faint sweetness of wood smoke curling from countless hearth fires preparing for nightfall. You make your way along a rutted dirt road toward the town's main gate, shoulders weary from travel, yet feeling a gentle anticipation building for the warmth and refuge that await inside. The town gate stands open but will soon be closed for the night. A single guard lounges there, more relaxed than alert. He wears a rumpled gambeson bearing the town's emblem, a leaping white hart, and rests a spear lazily at his side. At this hour, he seems more concerned with keeping warm than enforcing law. He returns your approach with a tired but courteous nod. You pass under the archway into the town, your boots echoing softly on the cobbles beyond. Within, narrow lanes wind between half-timbered houses, whose upper stories lean out as if to whisper secrets across the street. Many windows are already aglow with flickering amber light. Through cracks in shutters, you glimpse cozy interiors, where families finish their evening bread and pottage by the hearth. The murmur of voices carries on the cooling air, a mother softly scolding a child to settle down, an occasional laugh from behind a nearby door, punctuated by the bark of a distant dog. From one shuttered window comes the muffled melody of a lullaby being sung to a restless infant. The gentle tune, briefly audible before a wooden shutter closes and hushes it again. All around, the little town is bedding down. The day's labor is done, and the comforts of night have begun. As you navigate through the dimming light of the main street, you pass a closed baker's stall here and a public water trough there. The aromas of the town at dusk drift around you. There is the yeasty, inviting smell of bread lingering from the bakehouse, still warm from the afternoon's batch. The tang of peat and oak smoke wafts from chimneys, carrying hints of savory stews and roasted meats from various kitchens. Puddles from an earlier rain shower reflect glints of newly lit lanterns hanging above doorways. A few latecomers scurry home before curfew, clattering softly over the damp cobbles. In the distance, a bell begins to toll, slow and solemn, signalling the on-nightly curfew. 24 L, 58 L, 66. With each heavy peal, the streets grow a little more hushed. Doors thud closed, and iron bolts slide into place behind them, as the town prepares to surrender itself to the governance of night, resting under the watchful eye of local law. Pulling your travel-worn cloak tighter around your shoulders, you follow a side lane that you've been told leads to the town's tavern. The promise of a warm fire, A hearty meal and friendly faces quickens your step despite your fatigue. Rounding a final bend, you spot it. A two-storied building, slightly larger than those around it. Its upper floor jettied out over the street on wooden beams. From a wrought iron bracket on that second floor hangs a painted wooden signboard, swaying gently in the evening breeze. By the light of a shielded oil lamp mounted nearby, you make out the emblem on the sign, a white stag, a heart, with proud antlers against a field of deep green. Even if you could not read the flowing script beneath, the image itself tells you the establishment's name, asterisk, asterisk, the White Hart Tea, 33L37. Hanging signs with pictorial symbols are the customary way to identify taverns and inns, a welcome sight for any traveller seeking lodging in a Strand 3L37. The building looks inviting against the gathering dark. Its ground floor walls are timber and daub, whitewashed but stained by years of weather and smoke. Diamond-paned lattice windows, small and a bit fogged with soot, glow with golden light from within. Through one slightly open shutter, you catch the flicker of firelight and the passing silhouette of someone moving inside. From under the heavy oak door leaks a slender beam of warm light, and with it wafts the mixed, muted sounds of a busy tavern evening. Distant laughter, the faint notes of a lute, the clink of pottery mugs. Just outside the tavern, you pause a moment to take in the scene. A few other late arrivals are about on the street. Farther down the lane, a man leads a cart toward the livery stable, and a pair of townsfolk share a quiet good night before parting ways to their respective homes. The tavern's own small stable, attached to the building's rear, emits the soft sounds of horses settling in for the night. A gentle snort, the rustle of hay as a stable hand pats down a mare's flank. You gently rub the velvety nose of your own faithful horse, who has carried you many miles today. The poor animal is drooping with fatigue. Just then, a sleepy stable boy emerges from the shadows of the yard, rubbing his eyes and offering to take the reins. Gratefully, you hand them over, knowing your mare will be rubbed down and fed. The boy leads your horse toward the warm smell of hay and lantern light in the stable, with a promise to give her water and bedding. This simple exchange fills you with relief. Both you and your steed will soon rest, safe for the night. You step up to the tavern's entrance, boots scraping on the worn stone threshold. For a brief moment, you take in the heavy oaken door, its surface gouged and darkened by years of use. An iron ring handle hangs at its center, polished smooth by countless hands. From inside, you can clearly hear the welcoming crackle of a fire and a burst of muffled laughter as someone likely tells a joke. The scent of something delicious, perhaps a rich meat stew or savory pie, wafts through the rebelled. Gaps in the door's wood, mingling with the sweet hint of spilled ale. It is the unmistakable aroma of a tavern at supper time, and it sets your stomach growling in anticipation. With dusk deepening around you and the curfew bell's echoes fading, you grasp the iron ring handle and push the tavern door open, crossing the threshold from the cool, dark street into the embrace of firelight and fellowship beyond. Entering the tavern, evening, inside the common room. Inside, a wave of warmth and light engulfs you as you step fully into the tavern's common room. The contrast to the chill outside is immediate and soothing. You pause just a step beyond the threshold, letting the heavy door fall shut behind you with a wooden thud that momentarily joins the room's ambient sounds. The mixed aromas of the tavern enfold you. Wood smoke from a blazing hearth, the mouth-watering scent of simmering stew, and the yeasty, slightly sour note of spilled ale from earlier revelries. Beneath these, there lingers an earthier smell of old rushes and trampled straw that have soaked up years of spilled drink, a testament to many lively nights past. You glance down and notice your boots pressing into a layer of straw and dried rushes spread across the plank floor, placed there to absorb mud and spills that travellers carry in 8L, 26L, 32. Among the pale golden reeds underfoot are crushed herbs, sprigs of lavender, thyme, and rosemary from the look of them, strewn about to sweeten the air. Each step releases gentle hints of their fragrance, a subtle freshness mingling with the heavier tavern smells whenever anyone shifts in their C30. As your eyes adjust to the dim interior, you take in the scene around you. The common room is illuminated primarily by the orange glow of a central hearth fire, with only a few weak tallow candles on the wooden tables, adding faint twinkles in the far corners. 8L, 28L, 32. Overhead, the low ceiling's oak beams are lost in a shadow and a haze of smoke. The hearth itself is a broad, open stone fire pit in the middle of the room, radiating heat and light. There is no proper chimney here, only a small vent in the roof, so a thin veil of smoke hangs in the air, blurring the edges of the room in a perpetual haze. 8L, 30L, 32. Shadows dance across whitewashed plaster walls and heavy support posts as the firelight flickers. On one whitewashed wall hangs a smoke-stained tapestry, portraying a hunter pursuing a white stag through a green forest, a nod to the tavern's name and legend, its once bright threads now muted by age and hearth smoke. The furnishings are simple and well-worn, long trestle tables and a few round tables set on upturned barrels, pea-backless wooden benches, and a scattering of three-legged stools. 8L28, L32. Everything bears the marks of long use, dents, dark stains, knife cuts, and the puntless hands, yet all is sturdy and serviceable. Against one wall, you see racks of clay jugs and wooden tankards, and in a corner, a neat stack of barrels and burlap sacks lies in plain sight, perhaps holding extra ale or grain for the kitchen. The tavern lacks a proper back room for storage, so supplies are kept wherever there is space, lining the walls within easy reach of the bar 8L31, L35. The atmosphere inside is lively but comforting. Conversations hum in low tones from the assorted groups of patrons dotting the room. There may be a dozen or so people here altogether, enough to create a pleasant buzz of company, yet not so many as to be overcrowded or boisterous. They are a mixed bunch of locals and travellers, all basking in the tavern's warmth and easy leisure. 8L39L45. Nearest the fire, a couple of weathered old men sit together on a bench, their lined faces lit by the glow as they quietly sip from pottery mugs. At another table, a cluster of younger townsfolk laugh softly at some shared joke. A travelling merchant, in a road-stained cloak, reclines in a chair in the corner, rolling a coin over his knuckles absent-mindedly. He looks up at you briefly, as do a few others, curiosity flickering in their eyes at the entrance of a stranger. But after a polite moment, they return to their conversations. In one shadowy nook, two men, engrossed in a dice game, cast a quick glance in your direction, then resume their play, the ivory cubes clicking on the tabletop, the gentle din of mingled voices, the crackle of the fire, and the clink of drinking pots creates an ambiance of contentment. Over by the hearth, a tawny old hound lies curled up on a scrap of blanket, He opens one eye to regard you, the tavern's resident dog, practically a fixture by the warm hearth, then thumps his tail twice on the floorboards and settles his muzzle back on his paws, deciding you pose no threat. The tavern has accepted your arrival as naturally as a stream accepts a pebble tossed in. Any brief ripple of interest at the stranger stepping in subsides, and the easy rhythm of the evening continues unbroken. From behind a long wooden counter along the far wall, presumably the bar, a sturdy figure steps forward, wiping his hands on an apron. The tavern keeper has spotted you and offers a broad, welcoming grin. He is a burly man in his middle years, with a round, ruddy face that seems perpetually on the verge of a smile. A neatly trimmed beard, threaded with a few grey hairs, covers his cheeks and chin, and laugh lines crinkle at the corners of his bright eyes which seem to miss little of what goes on in his establishment. He wears a simple homespun shirt with the sleeves rolled up and an apron tied over it, stained with old ale and gravy, evidence of his hands-on work tending both bar and kitchen. Despite his modest attire, there is an air of pride in the way he carries himself. It's clear he is more than just a barkeep. He is the master of this domain, seamlessly playing the roles of gracious host, manager, mediator, and even protector, as situations demand 31L, 71L, 74. With a hearty clap on your shoulder, taking care not to startle you, he repeats his welcome. Welcome, friend. Come in and warm yourself, he calls in, a deep, genial voice that carries across the room. His tone is sincere and unfussy, instantly putting you at ease. He gestures to an empty spot at a nearby table, or to the bar, a grateful nod. You make your way further inside, feeling the last remnants of the outside chill melt away from your bones. You are no longer a stranger out in the dark. You are a guest in this house of camaraderie and comfort. Under the tavern keeper's kindly gaze, you step forward to take your place upon, ready to partake of the food, drink, and rest you have been longing for all day. The tavern keeper and staff settling in. The tavern keeper, now standing before you, radiates a genial authority. He is a man comfortable in his role, by the looks he has played for many years. He gives you a moment to shrug off your cloak and find a seat at a long table, not far from the hearth, where the warmth is best. Gratefully, you set down your pack and ease onto the bench. The tavern keeper asks a few polite questions. How far you've travelled, whether you found the road from the north in Ion, and he listens attentively to your replies. His manner is confident, yet comforting, as though every guest is a friend he hasn't seen in a while. After learning that you've come a long way and will be needing supper and lodging, he gives a satisfied nod. A hot stew and some ale will suit you, I wager, and there's a bed for you here as well. You're in luck. We have a room free tonight, he says cheerily. At your relieved smile, he pats the table. I'll have my wife fix you a hearty bowl, and ma bring you ale straight away. With that, he turns and calls toward the kitchen doorway, letting his deep voice be heard over the background din. One bowl of the mutton stew for our traveller, and some bread, if you please. From the back comes a woman's reply, slightly muffled by the wall. Right away, as the innkeeper returns behind the bar to fetch your drink, you catch a glimpse of the woman who answered, likely his wife, bustling near the hearth at the far end of the room. Cooking is done. She is sturdy and capable looking, dressed in a clean but well-worn woolen gown with the sleeves rolled to her elbows. Strands of chestnut brown hair escape from a kerchief on her head, and her cheeks are rosy from standing over the fire. Even as she responds to her husband, She is already sprinkling a pinch of salt and a handful of chopped carrots into a large coring over the kitchen fire, giving it a hearty stir. Each of her movements shows practiced ease. Clearly, she has fed many hungry patrons on nights like this. In an iron pot hung above the flames, she keeps the stew bubbling merrily, and you see her lean over to inhale its aroma and give it a satisfied nod. It strikes you that she may very well be the brewer of the ale as well as the cook. In many taverns, the wife, often called an alewife, takes charge of brewing the beer and ale served to patrons 14L, 41L, 47. Indeed, the frothy ale now being poured for you was likely made right here on the premises earlier this week. 14L, 41L, 47. The innkeeper soon returns to your table with a generous clay tankard in hand. He sets it before you, frothy foam trailing down the sides, and you wrap your fingers around the cool, dewy surface of the mug. There you are, he says warmly. Our own ale, not too strong, but honest. You nod in thanks and take a long sip. The brew is cool, cloudy and malty, wonderfully refreshing on your tongue. As you do, the tavern keeper is already off to tend to his other guests, moving with a purposeful energy born of long practice. You watch him make his rounds behind the bar and through the room, effortlessly juggling tasks. One moment, he is leaning over the counter, chatting with a patron about the day's catch from the river. The next, he is handing a fresh spoon to an older man who dropped his own on the floor. He pauses to exchange a joke with the group of young townsfolk, drawing a round of chuckles that you can hear across the room. At the end of the bar, a farmer in mud-caked boots raises his empty cup, catching the innkeeper's eye. The innkeeper holds up a finger in acknowledgement and reaches for a wooden rod hanging on the wall, a split wooden tally stick marked with notches. With a small knife, he carves a new notch into the soft wood and gives the farmer a friendly nod before refilling the man's ale from a large pitcher, 30L, 1L4. It seems that farmer will settle his debt later, a common understanding in these parts. Tavern keepers often extend credit to familiar locals, tracking what's owed with such notch sticks rather than immediate. Coin 30L1L4. The ease of the interaction speaks to the trust between host and patron, and to the innkeeper's aspected member of the community as much as a businessman. As you wait for your meal, the young serving maid appears at your side, balancing a wooden tray on one hand. She has a bright smile and an apron nearly as dusted with flour and drips as the innkeeper's. Wisps of flaxen blonde hair escape her cap as she sets down a trencher of bread and a small dish of butter in front of you. Stew will be out in a moment, love, she says kindly, calling you love in the familiar way that tavern servers often do. Her manner is cheerful and unhurried. Before you can even ask, she tops up your tankard from a leather jug on her tray and wipes the table of a few stray crumbs. You notice that she moves through the room with practiced grace, deftly balancing multiple pottery bowls and mugs at once. Despite the bustle, she remains good-humored, sharing a quiet laugh with patrons here and there. At one table, a tipsy patron reaches playfully for her waist as she glides by. Without missing a beat, the serving girl sways out of his reach, tut-tutting. None of that now, you rascal. With a teasing scold that makes his companions snicker, she winks to show no offense taken, and the would-be rogue chuckles and returns to his drink, suitably chastened. It's clear she's well accustomed to handling such overly friendly gestures and knows how to keep the mood light while maintaining her own boundaries. 31L, 73L, 74. The innkeeper watches the exchange from across the room. one eyebrow slightly raised, ready to intervene if needed. But seeing his employee manage it, he allows himself a small, approving nod. He remains ever alert, the quiet guardian of his establishment's peace. In fact, the harmony of the tavern is maintained largely by the innkeeper's steady hand and hard-earned reputation. The patrons all seem to respect him. A gentle word, or even a meaningful glance from him, is enough to quell any budding roughness. When one of the dice players lets out a curse at a poor throw, the innkeeper clears his throat loudly from across the room. The offender immediately checks himself, raising a hand in apology. "Sorry, master," the fellow calls, chastened. Satisfied, the innkeeper gives a curt nod and returns to ladling out ale. There's a mutual understanding. In this house, one can be merry, but one must also mind their manners. Tales of drunken brawls in rowdy taverns are plentiful in legend, and indeed, such scuffles were not uncommon historically. 33, L, 1L, 4. But tonight no fists will be thrown, no benches smashed. The White Hart is peaceful, enveloped in a convivial calm. Should any real trouble spark, you have no doubt this innkeeper, broad-shouldered and firm-voiced, would put a swift stop to it, perhaps with the stout oaken walking stick you see propped in the corner behind the bar. Yet his genial approach prevents most problems before they even start. By playing the roles of diplomat and peacekeeper so well, he keeps his establishment welcoming for all 31L, 71L, 74. After making a circuit of the room, the tavern keeper circles back to you. "Everything to your liking?" he asks pleasantly, resting a big hand on the back of your chair. You assure him that ithin you could have hoped for. You eagerly tell him it's the best stew you've smelled in years. The innkeeper fied and confides that it's his dear old mother's recipe. He even adds a dash of ale to the pot for extra richness, he says with a wink. You raise your tankard in salute and joke that perhaps that's why it all goes down so smoothly. He throws back his head in a hearty laugh and gives your shoulder a friendly clap. In the lull that follows, he points upward to a smoke-darkened ceiling beam engraved with an old date and initials, his grandfather's mark, and shares that the White Hart has been in his family for 3 generations. "That's why I run a tight ship," he chuckles. You nod, feeling the deep sense of pride and continuity that lives in these very walls. Soon, the innkeeper must continue on. Other guests need tending, but not before he promises to check back later. He brushes off your grateful thanks with a modest wave and moves off to greet a couple of new entrants who have just pushed open the tavern door. Foods and beverages served. Hearty supper. Just then, the serving girl returns, carefully balancing a steaming bowl between folded cloths to protect her hands. The rich aroma of slow-cooked meat and herbs precedes her. "Here we are," she announces softly as she sets a large wooden bowl of hot stew in front of you, along with a wooden spoon and a wedge of brown bread on a trencher. A pat of pale boo on the side. "Mind the heat. It's plenty hot," she cautions with a smile. The innkeeper passes by and gives you an encouraging nod. "Tuck in while it's warm," he says. "I wager you'll sleep well after a full belly." Al friendly grin. He leaves you to your meal, heading off to fetch a drink for another table. You lean over the bowl and let the steam waft over your face for a moment. The pottage looks marvelous. A thick, hearty stew of root vegetables, barley, and by the rich scent, mutton. You can see chunks of tender carrot and turnip, slivers of onion and leek, and even a few herbs floating on the surface alongside beads of savory fat. It is rustic and wholesome, the kind of simple country fare that truly satisfies. You give it a tentative stir with your spoon, and then bring that first spoonful to your lips. It is delicious, earthy and nourishing, with a pleasant peppery warmth. The broth has been thickened with barley and enriched with long-simmered meat juices. It tastes of home and comfort. The flavor even sparks a memory of your childhood, a thick broth your mother used to make on winter nights. And the unexpected recollection warms you almost as much as the stew itself. As you savor another spoonful, you feel strength returning to your tired limbs. Each bite is packed with goodness. The carrots soft and sweet. The mutton pieces braised until they nearly fall apart on your tongue. Strong notes of garlic and thyme season the stew. A dash of salt, and perhaps a hint of sage lend depth as well. The spices and herbs do more than add flavor. They also mask any gaminess or preserved tang in the meat, which likely was salt cured or smoked to last. 8L51, L54. The cook has wisely seasonally, creating a balanced, hearty flavor without any one element overpowering the rest. Every spoonful warms you from within, chasing away the chill and fatigue of the long road you've traveled. You take up a piece of the crusty brown bread from the trencher and tear off a generous chunk. The crust is thick and chewy, excellent for dipping. You swipe it through the rich gravy, watching it, soak up the brown juices, and then take a bite. The bread has a nutty, sourdough tang, not the soft, airy loaves of a fine manner's kitchen, but honest country fare that has substance. The butter, pale and fresh, spreads easily and carries a faint sweetness of spring grass from the cows. Together, the stew and bread make a perfect pair. You alternate between spoonfuls of savory pottage and bites of bread and butter to mop the bowl, until before you know it, your bowl is nearly clean. The innkeeper was right. Nothing chases away weariness like a hearty bowl of stew and good grain bread. As you eat, a profound sense of comfort unfurls within you. The L even inspires a flicker of appetite you haven't felt in some time. It reminds you of why people gather in taverns to dine, not just for sustenance, but for the shared warmth that accompanies it. You eagerly finish the last sip of broth, wiping the bowl with your remaining crust of bread. It's so satisfying that you find yourself letting out a small sigh of contentment. The flavor truly is the best you've had in years, and you tell the serving girl as much when she passes by to collect empty dishes. She compliment. "That's lovely to hear, dear," she says, tucking a stray wisp of hair behind her ear. "Our stew pot's been on the fire since dawn. We just keep it going and going, adding a bit of this and that. There's always a hot meal ready." She isn't exaggerating. In many taverns, it's common to keep a perpetual stew gently simmering over the hearth, replenished constantly with new ingredients so that it's always on hand for hungry guests. 6. L127, L134. You reflect with a smile that such ingenuity is part of what makes these places so welcoming. After eating your fill, you lean back and take a long draught of your ale. It's a fine brew, cool, lightly effervescent, and honest as the tavern keeper promised. The tavern keeper was right. It's an honest ale, mild and clouded with yeast, very much a traditional medieval ale. In this age, ale and beer are the staple beverages. They are consumed daily by nearly everyone, since plain water is often unsafe to drink. The fermentation process kills off harmful bacteria, making ale far safer than the town well water, in many cases 36L213, L218. You can drink deeply without fear of illness, an advantage not lost on you or any townsfolk. The ale in your cup is a golden amber hue in the firelight, unfiltered and faintly frothy. It's only gently alcoholic, what some call a small ale, brewed more to quench thirst than to inebriate. The flavor is yeasty and satisfying, with hints of malt, served at cellar temperature, cool but not chilled. It goes down smoothly. A second, smaller batch known as small beer, very low in alcohol, might be brewed for women and children's daily drink, but tonight's pour is a standard tavern ale, invigorating enough to refresh you, but unlikely to leave you light-headed. You sip contentedly. The ale's gentle bitterness and the lingering warmth of stew in your belly make for a heavenly combination. Around you, others are likewise raising their mugs in cheer. The old fellows by the fire quietly clink their ceramic cups together in a toast to something, perhaps simply to the comforts of the moment. A pair of travelling peddlers at a table across the way exchange a few coins to buy another round and toast to a successful market day tomorrow. One of the older men near the hearth catches your eye and lifts his mug in a friendly salute. Smiling, you lift yours in return. "Good health to you," he says warmly. "And to you," you reply softly before drinking. Such small rituals of tavern hospitality warm you almost as much as the food and fire. Before long, your tankard is empty and your stomach is happily full. A pleasant heaviness settles in your limbs. The combination of good food and drink has loosened the knots in your lips, muscles, and chased away the stiffness of travel. A comfortable drowsiness tugs at the edges of your mind, but you resist it for now. The evening is still young, and there is more to see and hear in this cozy common room before you seek your bed. You push your empty bowl aside and settle more deeply against the high back of the wooden bench, ready to observe, and perhaps eventually join, the gentle currents of conversation swirling around you. The night is yours to enjoy, under the tavern's kindly roof. The common room and its patrons, nightlife in microcosm. With your hunger satisfied and a warm glow blooming in your chest, the opportunity to truly observe your fellow patrons. The tavern's common room is alive with small scenes of medieval life, each playing out in the amber lamplight like actors on a stage. It is fully dark outside now. Through the leaded windows you see nothing of the world beyond, only your own firelit reflection. But inside is a world unto itself, brightly lit in flickers, filled with voices and human presence. The tang of smoke and ale in the air has become almost comforting, a background tapestry to the tableau before you. You feel almost invisible in the best way, able to sit back against the wall with your ale and quietly take it all in. Nearest the great hearth, the two grey-haired men you noticed earlier are settled in with contented faces. One, a retired blacksmith by the look of his broad shoulders and the burn scars faintly visible on his forearms, is regaling his companion with a tale. You catch a few words about a tricky horse he once shoed in his youth, and the other old fellow chuckles appreciatively into his ale. The firelight plays over their lined faces as they share memories and the comfortable silence that only old friends can know. Not far from them, the group of young townsfolk who finished their supper now linger over their drinks. They're a boisterous bunch of apprentices, a cooper's lad, still in his leather apron, a mason's teenage son with limestone dust still in his hair, and a couple of farmers' daughters with baskets at their feet from selling produce earlier in the day. They tease and banter with each other, the girls joking about the boys' clumsy dancing at the last village feast and harvest home, and the boys protesting with good-natured grins. One freckled girl has produced some knitting, her needles clicking softly even as she giggles at a jape. Their youthful energy is infectious, You find yourself smiling at their minor dramas and flirtations, reminded that even after a long day of work, young people find joy and courtship in the tavern's respite. At a corner table under a smoky wall sconce, THD travelling merchant whom you observed earlier holds court with his two guards. Having eaten and drunk their fill, they've pushed aside their empty plates, and the merchant is now unrolling a map for them on the table. By their animated expressions and pointing fingers, it seems he's outlining the next leg of their journey or recounting a past adventure on those routes. The guards, sturdy, weather-tanned men with short swords propped against the wall, listen intently. One imagines they've heard many of their employer's stories before, perhaps more than once, but here in the tavern they seem happy to indulge him yet again. The yes voice carries occasionally over the hum, and there I was in Damascus, bartering with 3 traders at once, he declares, and his guards nod along, grinning. Not long after, he launches into another tale, this one about a narrow escape from bandits in a high mountain pass, which prompts his guards to exchange a wry smirk, clearly familiar with this oft-told adventure. Every so often, the merchant pauses to fish a leather coin pouch from his belt and count out a few coins, perhaps paying the guards their day's wage, or divvying profits from a recent sale. Business and leisure blend seamlessly here. After all, taverns serve as informal marketplaces and offices after hours, where deals are struck as easily as toasts are made. Not far from the merchant's lively corner, 2 figures sit in earnest conversation. One is a local wool merchant. You can tell by the tuft of raw wool caught on his sleeve and the shepherd's dog curled under his stool. And the other is a traveller with a bundle of goods, likely a peddler or small-scale trader. Spread on the table between them are a few tufts of wool and a scrap of parchment on which they scratch numbers with a quill. They appear to be negotiating the purchase of several fleeces that the trader might carry to another town. After some back and forth friendly haggling, they clasp hands to seal the deal, smiling in mutual satisfaction. It's clear the agreement was made over ale and trust rather than formal contracts. Such small bargains are a common sight here. The tavern serves as a sort of informal exchange and meeting ground after hours. By the hearth's glow, farmers, traders, and craftsmen comfortably do business, exchanging coins or promises for goods and services. In one evening, a traveller might secure supplies for the road, a farmer might find a buyer for his surplus produce, and a craftsman might be hired for a job, all within these plaster and timber walls. 8L40L44. Across the room, a gentle clinking of coins and subdued cheer announced the end of a dice game. The pair of men who were playing in the nook by the stairs have finished their contest. One of them, grinning broadly, sweeps up a small pile of copper farthings from the table. His winnings. The loser, taking it in stride, laughs and shakes the winner's hand, acknowledging a game well played. They promptly decide to use a few of those coins to buy the next round of drinks for themselves, calling over the serving girl and ordering 2 ales to celebrate a friendly wager settled. The innkeeper's earlier vigilance clearly ensured that the gambling remained good-natured. Here in the White Hart, competition and camaraderie walk hand in hand, each tempering the other. Beside you on the long bench, the quiet pilgrim in the travel-stained cloak is now engaged in low conversation with the kindly widow who shared her cheese with him earlier. They speak softly, the widow asking the pilgrim about the holy sights he's seen on his journey. He produces a worn wooden rosary from his pocket to show her, describing, in a gentle, lilting voice, the shrine of some saint he visited 2 weeks ago. He quietly recounts a miracle he claims to have witnessed there, a crippled child suddenly walking after a fervent prayer, and the widow gasps softly, crossing herself with reverence at the wonder of it. She thanks the pilgrim for sharing such grace, and they both smile, falling into comfortable silence once more, united in faith and the tavern's warmth. In a dimmer alcove by the front door, you notice for the first time a figure in a dark brown robe, quietly observing the room. It's a friar. The shaved patch on the crown of his head, the tonsure, and the simple wooden cross hanging from his neck mark him as a man of the church. He's seated at a small table with a nearly empty jug of ale and a half-eaten heel of bread. A large leather-bound book lies open before him, and by the light of a stubby candle, he appears to be jotting notes, or perhaps copying a passage onto a scrap of parchment. Every now and then he looks up from his writing to smile benevolently at a burst of laughter or song that erupts in the room, as if appreciating the vibrancy of secular life around him. It might seem surprising to find a clergyman here, but in truth, monks, friars, and even parish priests are known to wander into taverns from time to time. 36, L, 90L, 97. Some come to keep an eye on their flock, others to rest during long travels, relying on charity for a meal and drink, and some simply to enjoy a bit of humanity and maybe a draught of ale after a day of preaching. This friar appears to be an educated man. Perhaps he's making notes of the local dialect or collecting folk tales as some wandering friars did. He chuckles softly as a couple of tipsy villagers nearby begin a light-hearted argument over a singing game, and he takes a sip of ale, clearly finding enjoyment in the mundane revelry around him. All around, the tavern hums with interaction and life. Snatches of conversation float to your ears from every direction. At one side, a pair of coopers, barrel makers, who appear to have met here by chance, are animatedly debating the best type of oak wood for aging ale, pounding the table in friendly disagreement whenever one makes a particularly witty point. At another table, you catch a mother laughing as she scolds her grown son for spending too many evenings drinking at the tavern instead of helping with the farm. Her tone is half serious, half jest, provoking laughter from those around them, and a sheepish grin from the son. In a back corner, a few villagers are discussing the latest news from the outside world. One man swears he heard that the king's army won a great battle in a far-off land, though his details are fuzzy, while a woman excitedly describes a travelling caravan of performers that is expected at the town fair next month, listing the jugglers and dancing bears she's heard rumour of. Information flows freely here, each person contributing what they know and eagerly absorbing what others have to share. In an age without printed newspapers or easy communication, taverns like this function as the social networks of the day, the hubs where one learns about everything from local gossip to world events. 8L40, L44. Tonight, you even share a few tidbits of your own when asked, mentioning that the wooden bridge at Coldwater Creek has finally been repaired, and describing a merchant caravan you passed on the road that should arrive here in a few days. Your listeners nod appreciatively. Such news will likely spread around the town by tomorrow morning. For all the different backgrounds gathered here, farmers, craftsmen, soldiers, clergy, traders, young and old, men and women, there is a pleasant harmony in the room. Perhaps it is the universal comfort of the fire and drink, or the unwritten understanding that for this evening, everyone shares as equals. The usual barriers of rank and fortune soften here. At one end of the room, a blacksmith's sturdy daughter is arm wrestling a tipsy young squire to general amusement and beating him soundly amid friendly cheers. Nobody here cares that he's of noble birth and she a commoner's child. In this moment, they're simply two companions sharing in a playful challenge, equal under the tavern's roof. Each person has their story, and for tonight, all those stories coexist under the tavern's smoky rafters, a tapestry of human experience, threads of joy and fatigue, laughter and hunger is being woven before your eyes in the warm, flickering air. It strikes you that within these walls, the usual distinctions of status and class bend or even disappear entirely. Time seems to slow in this congenial atmosphere. You sip the last of your ale and feel deeply content as you watch the tavern keeper circulating among the tables, topping up cups and exchanging the occasional wisecrack or bit of kindly advice. The tallow candles have burned a little lower now, their flames steady and golden. The night is maturing, but its end is not yet in sight. In fact, a new sort of anticipation is beginning to build as people settle in even more comfortably. Empty plates have been cleared away, coin purses tucked back into pockets, and now instruments, yes, instruments, start to appear from cases and hiding spots. In one corner, a young man gently uncovers a lute, plucking a few tuning notes on its gut strings. Across the room, the cooper's daughter, who had been knitting, sets aside her needles and produces a small wooden flute from her basket. A hush gradually falls over the clusters of patrons as they notice these preparations. Smiles spread and heads turn toward a cleared space by the hearth that seems to act as an informal stage. The moment for music and storytelling is at hand, and the tavern, which has been lively with chatter, now quiets to an expectant murmur. A pleasant thrill of excitement ripples through you, mingling with your growing drowsiness. Mug in hand, wrapped in the tavern's warmth, you find you are perfectly poised to enjoy the entertainments of the evening. Music, storytelling, and games, nightly entertainment. A respectful hush falls over the tavern as the unofficial entertainment for the night commences. This is a cherished routine in establishments like this. After supper, its TI entails to lift the spirit 44L, 44L, 45. The young man with the lute finishes tuning his strings, and the cooper's daughter with the flute joins him by the hearth. In the expectant quiet, the lute player strums a gentle chord, testing the mood. A few patrons shuffle their chairs to face the makeshift stage area, and someone tosses a couple more logs onto the fire, causing it to brighten and crackle. The stage is set in the simplest of ways. A warm hearth at the back, an audience of villagers and travellers with drinks in hand, and the palpable camaraderie that the tavern has fostered all evening. Good folk, the lute player addresses the room with an amiable grin. Would you care for a song or a story tonight? A burly farmer near the bar calls out, "Give us a story of old," and several voices murmur agreement. The lute player laughs lightly and nods. He begins to pluck a soft, rolling melody, a background of soothing notes to weave his tale by, and in a clear, lilting voice, he launches into the story of the White Hart. In your mind's eye, the bard's words come alive. You see that noble hunter wandering through a moonlit forest, his breath turning to frost in the cold night air. His faithful horse trails behind, head drooping with fatigue. They have chased a magnificent white stag for days across bramble and bog, and now, in a clearing under ancient oaks, the hunter nearly loses hope. He falls to his knees on the frosty ground and bows his head, murmuring a prayer for guidance. At that very moment, from beyond the tree line, a gentle light appears. Stepping soundlessly into the glade is the great stag itself, ghost-pale hide shining in the moon's glow, antlers like living branches crowned with silver. The hunter catches his breath, awestruck. The ethereal creature regards him with calm, wise eyes, then turns and beckons with a toss of its mighty antlers. To refuse, the hunter rises and follows. Through shadowy groves and over glistening moss, the stag leads him a short distance to a hidden spring bubbling up between the roots of an oak. The water of that spring is clear as glass and smells faintly of green moss. The exhausted hunter kneels and drinks deeply, scooping the cool water in his cupped hands. As he does, strength floods back into his limbs, and the weight of despair lifts from his heart. When he looks up to offer thanks, the white heart is gone, vanished among the shafts of moonlight and the silent trees. The hunter understands then that he has been blessed by a divine spirit of the forest. Right then and there, on that very spot, the site where this tavern now stands, he vows to build a refuge so that no traveller should ever again suffer the loneliness and fear he felt that night. He keeps that promise, and so, the legend says, did the White Hart Tavern first come to be. As the lute player speaks the last lines of the legend, you notice many in the audience have a faraway look in their eyes, as if picturing the mystical stag beneath the ancient trees. The hearth fire crackles gently, and for a moment, the entire room is wrapped in a shared dream of moonlit forests and guardian spirits. Then, a collective sigh escapes the listeners, followed by heartfelt applause and the thumping of a few mugs on tabletops in appreciation. The lute player bows with a humble flourish, and after a pause, transitions into a song, a ballad said to be about that very stag and the hunter's eternal gratitude. The flute joins in with a high, lilting harmony. The melody is hauntingly beautiful, its notes echoing up to the rafters. The lyrics are in an old dialect but plainly poetic, speaking of silver moonbeams through the leaves and the gentle guidance of a protector unseen. Through shadowed glen and ancient oak, a pale guide walks at night, leading the weary far from fear into dawn's gentle light. The tavern listens in rapt silence, the only other sounds the soft pop and hiss of the fire and the occasional sniffle of emotion from someone moved by the tune. The serving girl has paused in her duties, leaning lightly against a support post with a dreamy smile as the music washes over her. The innkeeper stands quietly behind the bar, polishing a mug with a rag in slow circles, but his eyes are distant and shining, clearly transported by the song's simple beauty. Some of the patrons hum along if they know the refrain, their voices low and blending like a well-practiced choir. A few couples have even risen from their seats to sway gently to the music. Near the hearth, the young cooper's apprentice, the lad who had produced the lute, stands now with one of the farmer's daughters, and they turn slowly in time together, with her head on his shoulder and their shadows dancing large and twirling on the tavern wall. An older man claps softly to the beat, and even the old hound by the fire thumps his tail in quiet contentment. When the ballad ends, it's as if a spell has been lifted softly. The listeners stir from their reveries. Sighing went. The flute player laughs and gives the lute player a playful nudge as the crowd begins to applaud in earnest, some thumping their ale mugs on the tables in hearty approval. The performers grin and offer modest bows. In the wake of the music, a cheerful energy returns to the room, though softened by the lateness of the hour. A few spirited souls encourage the musicians to strike up a more lively tune, and not disappointing, the lute player immediately picks out a merry, up-tempo melody. The cooper's daughter lifts her flute again and trills a sprightly counterpoint. This time, a trio of young men jump up to dance an impromptu jig in the cleared space by the hearth. Their boots clatter on the wooden floor in time to the quick beat, eliciting laughter and clapping in rhythm from onlookers. The lively interlude is brief but delightful, the dancers spinning and stamping with more enthusiasm than skill, until they collapse breathlessly onto a bench amid good-natured cheers. It seems this will be the final flourish of the night's merriment. Now, the evening truly winds down. A couple of locals retrieve a well-worn board for 9 men's Morris, laying it out on an empty table by candlelight. They quietly begin to play, moving small stone tokens with tired but happy concentration. In another corner, the dice gamblers from earlier have convened a new diversion. One has produced a deck of painted cards, and a small group has gathered around to test their luck at a simple card game, murmuring wagers and shuffling cards as the hour grows late. These quiet games continue, part of the tapestry of tavern life, carrying on even as many patrons start to succumb to weariness. You lean back and observe the whole scene. The glowing hearth, the lingering notes of music still seeming to hang in the air, the clusters of people engaged in soft talk or gentle games. In this tender atmosphere, you feel a sense of unity with everyone here. Travelers and townsfolk, old and young, have together shared in the same stories and songs. The entertainments of the night have bound the diverse patrons in camaraderie and good cheer. This communal joy is precisely what makes a tavern like this so memorable. It occurs to you that in a single evening, you have witnessed so many facets of life: laughter and thoughtful silence, dancing and storytelling, the mundane and the magical, all intertwined naturally in the amber glow of the tavern. At length, even the most energetic guests begin to yawn behind their hands. One of the lute strings snaps with a tiny twang, an unmistakable sign that it's time to give the instrument, and perhaps the player, a rest. The musicians chuckle and start packing away their instruments, accepting final thanks and a round of applause from those nearby. The mood in the tavern has shifted to one of mellow fulfillment. People finish the last sips of their ale, exchange final pleasantries and farewells, and begin to think of their beds. The serving girl extinguishes a few of the dimmer candles and quietly collects stray cups. As the performers take their seats again, receiving pats on the back and compliments, you realize your own eyelids have grown quite heavy. A languid contentment has spread through your body. It is the kind of pleasant fatigue that follows a night of good food, good company, and soulful entertainment. With the hour grown late, you decide it is time to seek the comfort of your lodgings upstairs. The fire has burned down to a deep bed of crimson coals, and the remaining candles gutter low, casting long, quivering shadows on the walls. You rise from your seat, stretching your arms slightly, and prepare to retire for the night, profoundly grateful for the gentle conclusion of this memorable evening. Lodging and sleeping at the tavern, late night, finding rest. The tavern keeper, noticing your weariness, catches your eye and gives you a knowing, friendly nod. He gestures towards the staircase at the far end of the room and quietly mouths, "Sleep well," so as not to disturb the remaining patrons. You smile and nod in thanks. Taking up your pack, you make your way towards the wooden stairs that lead to the tavern's upper floor. Each step creaks softly under your weight as you ascend. guided by the soft glow of a small tin candle lantern the serving girl has lent you for the night. The narrow staircase climbs along the wattle and daub wall, which is whitewashed but smudged by years of hands dragging along it for balance. The noises of the common room fade slightly with each step up, replaced by a hush that grows heavier as you near the sleeping quarters. The air above is cooler and tinged with the scent of old wood and thatch. At the top of the stairs, you find a short, dimly lit corridor with a low ceiling, low enough that you must incline your head to avoid brushing the beams. The plaster walls up here are bare, save for a simple wooden cross hung at one end, and the floor is laid with fresh straw to muffle footsteps. The tavern keeper has given you a private room, a modest luxury in a tavern of this kind. Often, travelers simply bunk together in a common hall, 36 L, 33 L, 37. Tonight, however, the White Hart is not fully occupied, so a tiny chamber is yours alone. By the light of your candle lantern, you count 2 other doors along the corridor, likely other guest rooms, from behind whose stout oak panels you hear the muffled sound of someone snoring in one, and perhaps 2 quiet voices whispering a last midnight prayer in another. All is peaceful. You move softly to the door marked with a chalk 3, your room for the night, and turn the simple iron latch. It opens with a wooden scrape, and you step inside. The little chamber is humble but welcoming. The faint scent of fresh straw and old timber greets you. The glow of your candle reveals a sturdy bed frame against one wall, atop which rests a thick mattress plump with straw stuffing and covered in a coarse linen sheet. A woolen blanket, neatly folded, lies at the foot of the bed, awaiting your use. There is a low wooden stool beside the bed, to serve as a nightstand perhaps, and a small shuttered window on the far wall, currently closed against the chill. The plaster walls are plain, but someone has hung a dried bundle of lavender and chamomile from a ceiling beam, a natural freshener and pest deterrent, adding a faint sweet fragrance to the air. Despite the room's simplicity, it feels exceedingly comfortable after the long journey and lively tavern hall. This snug little space is yours for the night. With a weary sigh of relief, you set down your pack and sit on the edge of the bed. The ropes supporting the straw mattress creak gently, and the straw inside rustles as it shifts to accommodate your weight. It's not the feather bed of a nobleman's manor, but it is dry, clean, and more than sufficient. Running your hand over the blanket, you find it pleasantly thick and only a bit scratchy, woven from local wool, likely by the tavern keeper's wife herself. The evening's chill has seeped into the room somewhat, but the blanket and the lingering warmth in your bones from the hearty stew will soon chase that away. Overhead, the thatch roof is low above you, and you can hear a stray nocturnal gust of wind rustle the eaves, reminding you how comforting it is to have a solid roof over you this night. Slowly, you remove your travel-worn boots and set them by the door. You shrug off your cloak and hang it on a wooden peg. The small stand in the corner holds an earthenware basin and pitcher of water for washing. Grateful for the chance to refresh yourself, you pour a bit of the cool water into the basin. By lantern light, you rinse your face and hands, scrubbing away the dust of the road. The water is cold but bracing, and you feel the last vestiges of travel grime melt from your skin. There's no mirror here. Mirrors are a rare luxury, but you can imagine you look a degree less road-beaten now, with the soot and sweat of the day rinsed away. You dab your face dry on a small linen towel left neatly folded by the basin, then finish preparing for bed. From your pack, you retrieve a fresh linen shirt and pull it on to sleep in, exchanging it for your sweat-stained tunic. You loosen your belt and place it, with your coin pouch still attached, under the straw-filled pillow on the bed. Old habits of the road die hard. Even in this safe haven, you take a tiny precaution with your valuables, tucking them near where you'll lay your head. Satisfied that you've secured your belongings and that the door is latched, you turn down the lantern until only a faint glimmer remains, and then set it on the stool beside the bed. Settling onto the bed, you draw the wool blanket up and over yourself. The mattress cradles your aching limbs better than you expected. The straw inside is packed thick and relatively even, with only a few lumps that you easily shift away. You wiggle a bit to find the most comfortable position, and the mattress obligingly nestles around you. How luxurious it feels to lie horizontally after so many nights sleeping on hard ground or in cramped quarters. The pillow under your head is small and filled with soft down, or perhaps wool. Either way, it's a welcome cushion compared to your rolled-up cloak on the roadside. You reach over and extinguish your lantern, plunging the little room into darkness except for a faint silver ribbon of moonlight that sneaks through a crack in the window shutter. For a minute or two, you simply breathe in the quiet darkness. The blackness is complete enough that you can only just make out the pale oblong of the shuttered window and the vague outline of the door. It is quiet, profoundly quiet, compared to the lively common room below. Only a couple of subdued noises accent the stillness. The distant howl of a watchdog somewhere outside, and the soft scritch-scritch of what might be a mouse in the thatch above. A tiny reminder that even the best taverns have their furtive little residents. The sound doesn't disturb you. In fact, it only highlights how peaceful the night has become. You pull Theto your chin and sink your head into the pillow. The linens carry the faint scent of lye, soap and sunshine, likely laundered and aired recently, a reassuring sign of care. The straw-filled mattress beneath you releases a mild, sweet smell of dried grass with each slight shift of your body. Wrapped in warmth, you reflect for a moment on the day's experiences. In the span of a few hours, you have moved from the open road to the heart of a welcoming tavern, from being a lonely stranger at dusk to sharing bread, stories, and laughter with newfound companions by night. That sense of being cared for, of belonging even if just temporarily, lingers as a pleasant glow in your chest. You think of the legend of the White Hart guiding the lost hunter. How fitting that here, under the sign of the White Hart, you too have found guidance and refuge when you needed it most. Before sleep claims you entirely, you murmur a brief prayer of thanks for this shelter and for loved ones far away beneath the same night sky. In your drowsiness, you feel a comforting kinship with all travelers and homesteads spread across the darkened land, all awaiting the dawn together. Your body grows heavier with each passing breath. The straw mattress rustles softly as you shift to your side, finding a comfortable curl. The events of the evening drift through your mind in a soft haze. The tavern keeper's hearty laugh, the sound of the flute's lullaby, the taste of spiced ale and fresh bread, the glow of the hearth, and the murmur of friendly voices. These images dance slowly and then begin to fade as sleep's curtain gently falls. The world outside, the chilly night, the distant stars, the slumbering town, all recede, held at bay by the tavern's sturdy walls and the warmth cocooning you. Inside this little room, you are safe, fed, and at peace. With a final, deep breath, you let your eyes fully close. Any remaining aches in your muscles ebb away into the embrace of the mattress. The darkness behind your eyelids is soft and soothing. In the back of your mind, You register perhaps the faint echo of the town watch calling "All's well" in a far-off lane, and the distant church bell chiming a late hour, comforting signs that the world outside is quiet and secure. Wrapped in the tavern's silent, sleepy embrace, you succumb to the overwhelming drowsiness that has been gathering. Before you know it, you have drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, the kind that only comes in the aftermath of safety and satisfaction. The White Hart Tavern, with all its gentle wonders of the evening, watches over you as you rest, a haven in the middle of an dark medieval night. Safety, law, and local customs. Midnight reflections. Sometime in the deep of night, you stir slightly in your bed. The embers in the hearth below must have burned low by now. The floorboards overhead are quiet, and even the tavern's old hound is silent. The tavern, and the town around it, slumbers under the guard of the night. Through the faint haze of your half-dreaming mind, you become aware of the many unseen forces that make this night feel so secure. The tavern may be a place of merriment and freedom, but it also operates within the strict rules of the town and the long-held customs of hospitality. Not long ago, you heard the town's curfew bell ringing at dusk, a sound that brought with it an obligation for public houses to lock their doors and for travelers to settle in until morning. 24 L 58 L 66. By law, once that bell was rung, tavern keepers had to either send patrons home or provide them lodging for the night. Since wandering the streets, after curfew was forbidden, anyone found abroad without a light or good reason could face punishment. 24L, 58L, 66. The innkeeper of the White Hart took this responsibility seriously. At the bell's toll, he dutifully closed up the tavern, gently ushering out the last local stragglers who weren't staying over, and bolting the heavy front door behind them. Those of you left inside, a few fellow travelers bedding down in the guest rooms, and perhaps one villager asleep by the kitchen hearth, were thereby under his roof for the night, as the law requires. This arrangement, mandated by civic authority, yet grounded in common sense, ensures that no drunken reveler stumbles into the night to cause trouble or come to harm. 24 L 58 L 66. It's a custom that protects both the peace of the town and the safety of guests like you. In the comfortable darkness of your room, you reflect on how the tavern sits at the intersection of individual freedom and communal responsibility. Earlier in the evening, the curfew bell had rung and lights were doused all over town. Anyone out after dark needed to have a lantern or a very good reason. Otherwise, they could face a stern reprimand from the town watch. But tonight, you were safely tucked behind the tavern's thick walls as those echoes faded. The innkeeper barred the tavern's main door and likely took a final walk around the common room to check that every window was latched and every candle extinguished or safely sheltered. These end-of-night rituals are almost sacred in their observance. By prohibiting open flames and unescorted strangers after curfew, the town authorities minimize nightly accidents and mischief. And by locking his door at the appointed time, the tavern keeper does his part to uphold those safety ordinances, while also protecting the slumbering guests within. Your mind drifts to the matter of security and order, despite the diverse mix of people who shared the common room tonight. There was a mutual understanding that certain behaviors were off limits. Part of that is due to local law. Towns in these times often prohibit carrying naked blades or deadly weapons inside taverns and on the streets after dark. 24 L 58 L 66. You recall that none of the patrons tonight, even the merchant's well-armed guards, ever drew a weapon or even looked anxious about their arms. The atmosphere of the White Hart itself discouraged it. A prominently displayed old notice by the tavern entrance, a parchment tacked up near the door, politely reminds all who enter to leave their quarrels and their daggers outside. In larger cities or rougher ports, taverns might get rowdier or even dangerous when the sun goes down. But here, the combination of the innkeeper's vigilance and the town's strict yet sensible rules keeps everyone civil. In fact, you have heard cautionary tales from fellow travelers about disreputable roadside inns, places where unscrupulous landlords or even bandits in disguise prey on unwary guests. But nothing of that sort crosses your mind here. The White Hart's honest reputation and the watchful presence of the town guard reassure you that this establishment remains a sanctuary for the weary, not a trap for the unwary. It occurs to you that small villages like this are often safer than lawless highways or anonymous city taverns precisely because of the community ties. Everyone here is known to everyone else, and a troublemaker would have no shadow to hide in. Word of mouth would swiftly ruin a tavern that allowed thievery or violence. There's comfort in that thought as you drift on the edge of sleep. Within these walls, under the innkeeper's protection and the unspoken guardianship of local goodwill, you feel as safe as one can be in a world that is often uncertain. Even half asleep in your bed, you appreciate how taverns like this are upheld by a balance of legal regulation and cultural custom. The authorities impose curfews, drink limits, weapons bans, price controls, and licensing requirements. But enforcement can be inconsistent and largely falls on innkeepers' shoulders. 24L, 58L, 66, 44L, 91L, 97. Fortunately, this tavern's keeper is diligent in doing his part. You heard him mention his grandfather's mark on the beam, a reminder that his family's legacy and livelihood depend on maintaining a place of good repute, and he has clearly succeeded. Tonight has been orderly yet free, merry yet safe. Your thoughts wander further, touching on other customs that kept the tavern genial. Earlier in the night, when one of the locals raised a toast to you, the stranger in their midst, it was more than just friendliness. It was part of a tradition of hospitality. Travelers are generally welcomed in places like this, with the expectation that they bring news or stories to share, which you did, and respect the house rules in return. We did. Tavern culture demands an easy kind of camaraderie among those on the road. You gladly upheld your end of that unspoken bargain, and in exchange, you were treated generously. It pleases you to know that even without formal contracts or guarantee-old customs protect the weary on their journeys. An innkeeper's reputation, after all, hinges on providing a safe haven. Any tavern suspected of cheating guests or harboring criminals would quickly lose business or be shut down. Here, the trust between traveler and host is a form of social currency, honored on both sides. In the snug darkness, your thoughts slow and your breathing deepens. You may be vaguely aware of a distant all's-well call from the town watchman making his rounds outside, or of the village church bell ringing the first hour past midnight. But these sounds only reassure you Furt is well in the world tonight. You pull the blanket a little closer around your shoulders and sink deeper into the straw mattress. The tavern around you falls into complete silence. At last, not a single disturbance mars the peace. No raised voices, no footfall in the corridor, nothing but the faint settling noises of an old building resting. You reflect, just as you drift off again, on how taverns like this gently knit a community together each night, highborn and lowborn, local and traveller, all found common ground tonight in laughter and story. Truly, taverns are small kingdoms of their own, where everyday folk and wayfarers can share warmth and shelter under one roof. In the tapestry of medieval life, taverns like the White Hart are shining threads, humble yet vital, offering fellowship and respite amid the long and uncertain roads of an earlier age. Tavern life across the seasons, a dream of change. That night, as you sleep soundly in your cozy room, your mind slips into dreams both vivid and gentle. It's as if the deep comfort of the tavern conjures an enchanted vision. The cozy darkness behind your closed eyes gives way to dreamy images, and in your slumbering imagination, you find yourself back in the tavern's common room. But now, the world beyond the tavern's windows is shifting through the seasons, like scenes from different nights woven together. In your dream, you experience what this tavern might bring us points in the year, each with its own special atmosphere. In one moment, it is winter. You dream of a midwinter's night at the White Hart Tavern, cold and clear. Beyond the tavern's sturdy walls, snow lies thick upon the ground, shimmering under a full moon. The wind outside has a sharp bite. You can hear it occasionally rattle the wooden shutters. But inside the tavern, all is warmth and golden light. The great hearth is piled high with logs. A Yule log of impressive size crackles and pops, sending a cascade of orange sparks up toward the smoke vent. The room is filled with villagers and travelers who have gathered to escape the bitter weather. Cloaks dusted with snow now hang, steaming near. The fire and rosy-cheeked patrons rub their hands and stamp their boots, as feeling returns to cold, numbed fingers and toes. The air carries the spiced scent of mulled ale, a special winter treat of hot, honeyed brew infused with cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. A large cauldron of this wassail sits at the edge of the hearth, kept hot over the coals. The innkeeper's wife ladles it freely into waiting mugs, and the sweet, spiced aroma wafts throughout the room. Green garlands of holly and ivy deck the walls in honor of Christmastide. Beneath the low tavern beams, a huge Yule log has been wedged into the hearth. Tradition holds that its flame should burn through all 12 days of Christmas. An abundance of food, drink, friends, and entertainment makes the tavern a perfect haven on this dark, snowy night. In one corner, you notice locals cheer as a shy young cooper bites into his slice of Twelfth Night cake and discovers a hidden bean, marking him as the evening's king of the bean. With much laughter, the revelers crown him with a makeshift paper crown and playfully obey his silly commands for the remainder of the night. Laughter is abundant but soft, the cozy intimacy of the winter tavern. You see families huddled around the hearth on benches, exchanging small handmade gifts and raising toasts of nut-brown ale to health and prosperity. Tired farmhands, sitting closest to the fire to warm their bones, toast the successful slaughter and salting of meat that will see their families through the lean winter. The tavern becomes more than a refuge. It is like a womb of community in the darkest time of year. Through the leaded glass windows, you catch a glimpse of snowflakes swirling outside, but not a single flake penetrates this sanctuary of light. You feel the contentment of the people around you, how the tavern's hospitality turns a harsh winter evening into a time of fellowship and merriment. With a gentle drift of your dream, the scene shifts to spring. Now the tavern's door stands propped open to a mild, rain-washed evening. It is early spring, just after a cleansing sunset shower. The air wafting in is cool and smells of freshly turned earth and blooming hawthorn. A few courageous green shoots of new grass poke up along the edges of the tavern's threshold, and the fields beyond the town shimmer with a faint green haze of new growth. Inside the tavern, the mood is optimistic and lively. The hearth fire still crackles, but lower now, more for cheer than necessity. Many patrons have shed their heavy winter cloaks. Instead, they wear lighter tunics, some still damp at the hems from spring's drizzle. There is a sense of renewal in the conversations. People talk of planting schedules, of young animals born in recent weeks, and of the upcoming Easter feast day and village May Day celebrations not far off. Nearby, two adolescent farmhands jest about which village girls they hope to partner with at the maypole dance, earning themselves teasing elbows from those very girls and amused eye rolls from an older sister. At another table, an elderly couple pass around bits of a special Easter simnel cake they saved from Sunday's holy day. The scent of honey, spice, and dried fruits mingling with the tavern's smoky air. The innkeeper has placed small clay jars of fresh wildflowers, primroses and violets, on a few tables, brightening the room with touches of spring colour and scent. The fare served reflects the season's change. Travellers breaking their Lenten fasts enjoy bowls of stew enlivened with early greens and wild herbs. And there's fresh goat cheese, young and slightly tangy, set out alongside the bread. A travelling tinker, giddy with spring wanderlust, sits by the hearth, excitedly showing off a newly forged set of shears he plans to trade at the next village, while a pair of pilgrims bound for Canterbury share a table, comparing the badges on their hats and swapping advice about road conditions ahead. You can feel the restlessness of spring in the tavern. People are eager to move again after winter's seclusion, to travel, to trade, to live fully now that the world is reawakening. The tavern hums with that anticipation. The door remains ajar between gentle rain showers, allowing the crisp scent of rain-soaked grass to freshen the room. A gentle breeze carries in the distant chorus of frogs from a pond outside the town wall. The White Hart in spring is a place of bright hope, where weary ploughmen and venturesome pilgrims alike gather to plan and look forward to the fruitful year ahead. Your dream flows onward, and now it is summer at the tavern. Dusk comes late, even at what would ordinarily be evening. A warm, honeyed light still filters through the tavern's open windows. The front door is propped wide open to invite any stray cooling breeze. Outside, the sky is a deep cornflower blue with a streak of orange from the just set sun, and swallows swoop through the balmy air to catch insects. The tavern's common room is actually more sparsely populated on this summer night. Many townsfolk are busy with evening chores in the long daylight, and some prefer to linger outdoors. Indeed, a few tables and benches have been set just outside the tavern, under the spreading oak tree on the green, and you see a small group of locals sitting there under the first stars, tankards in hand, enjoying their ale in the open air. Lively fiddle music drifts from outside as well. One young man has brought out a fiddle and bow, playing a cheery folk tune, while a couple of maidens clap and tap their feet along. Inside, those who have sought the shade of the tavern wipe sweat from their brows and relish the tavern's cool, thick-walled interior. The floor has been freshly sprinkled with water to lay the summer dust and strewn with fragrant mint and meadow sweet, which release a refreshing scent underfoot. The ale tonight is cool from the cellar, especially welcome in the warmth. The innkeeper draws it straight from a spigot, hammered into a cask, topping each brimful wooden mug with a foamy head. Plates of simple summer fare are on the tables. Ripe berries, slices of cold roast, left over from midday dinner, and wedges of cheese and cucumber. The conversation is light and unhurried. A travelling minstrel, stopping here between larger towns, sits in a corner strumming a gentle harp tune, resting in between his longer performances by softly practicing chords. The door and windows are left open, allowing the sounds of a summer evening to mingle with the tavern's own, the chirring of crickets outside, the occasional buzz of a June bug around the door, the distant laughter of youths lingering under the stars. Earlier this week, on Midsummer's Eve, a bonfire in the tavern's yard drew these same neighbours together in song and dance long after sunset. Tonight, you still see a few women weaving wilted flower garlands into their hair and exchanging fond smiles about those solstice revelries, a memory of summer's peak lingering sweetly in the warm air. As full dark finally settles and the summer stars emerge, some of the outside crowd mosey back in to join those inside. The night is sultry, so the innkeeper leaves the windows open, inviting the soft sounds of rustling leaves and the glow of fireflies to become part of the tavern's ambience. There is a sense of ease, of unhurried pleasure in company that summer brings. The White Hart in summer becomes almost an extension of the outdoors, the boundary between the tavern's cozy comfort and the wider world blurred by the warm breeze and languid laughter drifting through the door. Time in your dreams skips ahead, and harvest season arrives. It is autumn, and the tavern is once again a bustling haven against the lengthening nights. You envision an autumn evening where the air outside carries the tang of wood smoke and the specker, earthy perfume of fallen leaves. The tavern's door opens repeatedly to admit farmers coming in from the chilly dusk, stamping mud off their boots after long days, bringing in the crops. They carry with them the smell of the fields, dry wheat, bruised apples, and a hint of bonfire from burning the stubble. The common room is decorated with the season's bounty. Bristling sheaves of wheat and barley are propped in corners, a tribute to a good harvest, and a fat pumpkin or two sit near the hearth, destined for the stew pot, or to be hollowed into lanterns for Hallows Eve. The mood here in autumn is hearty and celebratory. The labour of summer and early fall has paid off, and now is the time to enjoy its fruits. On the tables, alongside the usual trenchers of bread, are bowls of freshly roasted chestnuts, baskets of rosy apples, and pitchers of newly pressed cider. The cider, tart and amber gold, is being passed around freely. Its sweet, fermented bite warms many bellies. Tonight, in one corner, villagers cluster around the fire, raising their cups in repeated toasts. Cheeks flushed with good cheer, they toast the successful harvest brought safely in, the abundance of apples and grain this year, and the absence of flooding or blight. Each toast is followed by a chorus of "Wassail, be you healthy," and a round of hearty drinking. A travelling merchant occupies a prime seat near the hearth. He's been busy doing business even at this hour, bargaining with the miller for sacks of flour, and with a beekeeper for wedges of wax and honeycombs. He scribbles notes in a little ledger by candlelight, planning his purchases and sales, while occasionally pausing to clap a neighbour on the back and share a bawdy joke. In an alcove, an older woman, you recognise her as the gaffer who was telling a ghost story earlier, is entertaining a couple of younger wives with another seasonal tale now. This time, it's a favourite autumn yarn about how Jack-o'-the-lantern tricked a demon one All Hallows Eve. She waggles her fingers and deepens her voice at the spookiest parts, describing how clever Jack carved a cross into an old oak tree to trap the howling demon and forced it to bargain for freedom. She tells of the demon's fiery eyes flaring in fury, and how poor Jack, barred from both heaven and hell, was left to wander with only a burning coal inside a hollowed turnip to light his way. The young wives squeal and clutch one another at the tale's creepy climax, then dissolve into laughter at its absurdity. They cross themselves in amused relief as the listening patrons around them applaud the old familiar story. Despite the approaching winter, the atmosphere is one of gratitude and revelry. Outside, a brisk gust sends red and gold leaves skittering across the threshold when someone opens the door, only to have that door swiftly shut again amid chuckles about winter biting at our backs. Inside the White Hart, bellies are full, hearts are light, and the glow of fire and camaraderie creates an autumnal haven against the cooling world outside. Through these seasonal reveries, you remain a quiet and appreciative observer in the tavern's corner, your dream self, savoring how the tavern adapts and thrives in every time of year. Each season's scene unfolds seamlessly into the next, the crackling pine boughs of winter giving way to spring's fresh wildflowers, which transform into summer's open windows, and then into autumn's jolly feasting. In the fluid logic of dreams, hours or months pass in an instant, and yet each moment feels vivid and real. You feel the blissful coziness of a roaring fire on a snowy night, the optimism of a green spring gathering, the sultry ease of a summer twilight, and the rich fulfillment of an autumn celebration. The tavern remains constant through them all, the same sturdy beams overhead, the same faithful hearth at its heart. Yet the mood and asker, colours change with the turning of the year. The White Hart's character is a tapestry woven from all these seasons' threads, and your dreaming soul marvels at how each time of year brings out a new facet of its warmth. As this long, gentle dream begins to fade, you sense, in that mysterious way one does in dreams, the first pale hint of dawn approaching in your real world. The images of the tavern's seasonal delights grow hazy, the sounds dimming to silence. In your mind's eye, you see one last comforting scene, the tavern's heavy door opening once more onto a crisp early morning. The sky beyond soft, with the rosy tint of sunrise. One by one, the lanterns and candles that illuminated your dream wink out, as the vision of the tavern's night yields to the subtle light of dawn in truth. A traveller's reflections before dawn, early morning, departure, a soft light, pale and blue, begins to seep into your little room. It is the hush of pre-dawn, when the sky is turning from black to the faintest grey, and the world holds its breath for morning. You awaken naturally, slowly blinking your eyes open in the stillness. For a moment, you remain there, warm under your blanket, and simply breathe in the quiet. There is a subtle change in the air, that almost imperceptible feeling that night has ended and a new day is gently arriving. The dreams of the tavern's seasonal pageant ebb from your mind like receding waves, leaving you with a profound sense of peace as you return to waking reality. You turn your head on the pillow and notice the narrow window. Sometime in the night, you crack the shutter for a bit of fresh air, and through it now pours a sliver of cool dawn light. It illuminates motes of dust dancing in the still air and paints a pale stripe across the rough wooden floorboards. In the silence, you can hear the earliest birds chirping outside, a clear, hopeful sound that promises good weather. Somewhere distant, a rooster crows, a proud clarion of daybreak carrying over the fields. Farther away in town, the little church bell begins a cheerful chime, ringing in the first prayers of the new day. You inhale deeply. The air slipping in carries the dewy scents of morning, damp earth, wood smoke from one or two hearths being rekindled for breakfast, and the freshness of sunlight just cresting the horizon. Wrapped in your blanket, you feel wonderfully restored. The sleep you found here has been the best in recent memory. Deep, uninterrupted, and filled with pleasant dreams. Any stiffness from the road has vanished. As you stretch beneath the blanket, your limbs feel light and your spirit refreshed. The tavern provided not only shelter and sustenance, but a kind of healing for the weariness of travel. In the calm of dawn, you reflect on this. The crackling fires, hearty food, and friendly faces of the previous night now seem almost like a happy story you read somewhere. Yet it was real, and it was yours. How remarkable, you think, that a simple country tavern could offer so much comfort and cheer in such a short span of time. Realizing that morning has broken and the road calls once more, you quietly rise from the bed. The straw mattress rustles softly as you swing your legs over the side and set your feet on the cool floor. You dress in the hush, pulling on your travel garments, still slightly warm from resting by the stove all night, and fastening your belt once again. Your clothes carry the faint, comforting scent of last night's hearth smoke, a souvenir of the tavern's hospitality that you'll carry with you on your journey today. At the washstand, a bit of water remains in the pitcher. You use it sparingly to splash your face and neck, chasing away the last wisps of sleep from your eyes. The shock of the cold water makes you gasp softly but leaves you feeling crisp and awake. Gathering your belongings, you pack them neatly into your satchel. Every item finds its place, with ease, as if sharing your eagerness for the road ahead. You take care to leave the little room as you found it, the blanket pulled up over the bed, the used towel draped to dry, the candle stub and basin left tidily in their places. There's a silent gratitude in these small gestures, your way of thanking the tavern and its keepers for the sanctuary of the night. Before departing the room, you pause and cast one more fond glance around, committing its details to memory. The gentle beam of early sunlight now peeking through the shutter's crack, the dried lavender hanging from the beam, still faintly perfuming the air, the humble stool and basin where your candle glowed hours before. It is an ordinary little chamber, yet for you it has become a place of renewal, a small, significant chapter of your journey that will stay with you. Lifting your satchel, you quietly undo the latch and step out into the corridor. The floorboards creak underfoot, but you tread lightly so, as not to disturb any late sleeping guests. Along the hall, the other doors remain closed. The snorer in one room is still happily sawing logs, it seems, and you imagine the friar or merchant behind another door just beginning to stir at the faint bell and bird calls of dawn. You make your way softly to the staircase and descend back to the common room. The tavern below is dim and calm, holding on to the last notes of night's tranquility. Only one or two of last night's candles still burn, guttering low, their flames a mere glimmer. The great hearth is now just a glow of sleepy red coals, not yet stirred into a fire for the day. You find the innkeeper already awake in the common room, crouching by the hearth. He is gently coaxing the embers back to life, adding a few splinters of kindling and a log, and blowing softly until a tongue of flame springs up anew. He must have heard your soft footfalls on the stairs, for he turns with a smile as you reach the bottom. "Good morning to you," he says in a low, warm tone, mindful of others upstairs who might still be sleeping. "And to you," you reply, returning the smile. He straightens from the hearth and wipes his hands on his apron. The innkeeper appears much the same as he did last night, sturdy, jovial, but in this gentle morning light, You notice a certain contentment in his face. Perhaps dawn is his favorite time of day here. The chores of a new morning beginning, another cycle of hospitality to unfold. "Sit you down a moment," he says quietly, motioning to a nearby table by the window. "We'll get you some bread and small ale for the road." Gratefully, you comply, setting your satchel by your feet and settling onto the bench. Outside the window, the sky is growing ever lighter. Pastel hues of pink and gold now streak the highest clouds. The village beyond the tavern is only just beginning to stir. Across the way, you see a barn door creak open and a bundled farmhand lead out. A pair of oxen to field. A rooster crows again from that farmyard, answered by the distant low of a cow being milked. But inside the tavern, the world still feels paused, savouring the last quiet moments before the day truly begins. The innkeeper disappears through the door that leads to the kitchen, and you hear low, happy murmuring. Likely, he is exchanging a morning greeting with his wife as she bakes. Before long, he returns bearing a simple wooden platter. Upon it sits a round loaf of dark brown bread, freshly baked, wisps of steam still rising from its cracked crust. Beside it on the plate is a small wedge of yellow butter and a wooden butter knife, as well as a clay cup of ale. "It isn't much, but it'll break your fast," he says modestly. The bread is warm and dense when you tear off a piece. You spread a dab of butter on it, watching it melt into the soft interior, and then take a bite. It's delicious, hearty, with malt and whole grain, faintly sweet. The innkeeper pours you a bit of small ale from a pitcher, a very light, low-alcohol brew often drunk in the morning. It's cool and mildly bitter, cleansing your palate and waking your senses gently. You savour this humble dawn meal. The bread, though coarse, tastes wonderful to your tongue after yesterday's travels, and the cool ale refreshes your throat. The innkeeper busies himself raking the hearth coals and setting a kettle on to boil, giving you a comfortable silence to enjoy your breakfast. As you chew the crusty bread, you gaze around the common room in the soft morning light. It looks so different now, empty of people and quiet. The wooden tables are wiped clean of last night's spills. The floor's fresh straw has been scattered anew. In the stillness, you can hear the gentle sweep of the innkeeper's wife's broom in the kitchen as she tidies, and the faint clink of pots as she prepares for the day's cooking. A ray of early sun slants through the open door, illuminating floating dust motes where just hours ago, lively shadows danced. The tavern at dawn is a place of peace and order, almost monastic after the revelry of the night. Too soon, you take the last bite of your bread and the final swig of your ale. It's time to take your leave and continue your journey. The innkeeper notices your cup and plate are empty and ambles over. You stand, shouldering your satchel once more. For a moment, you and he regard each other in that comfortable quiet of the early hour. You reach to your belt to retrieve a few coins, but he holds up a work-worn hand gently. "One night's lodging and supper. We said 8 pence, didn't we?" he murmurs. You nod and press the small stack of coins into his palm, along with an extra farthing as a token of your gratitude. He starts to object. "That's too much, friend." But you clasp his hand between both of yours and thank him sincerely for everything. He closes his fingers over the coins and inclines his head in gracious acceptance. "You're welcome here any time," he says softly. In those simple words, you hear genuine warmth. The tavern door swings open easily as the innkeeper unlatches it and pulls it wide for you. The morning air rushes in, brisk and carrying the fresh scents of dew and cut hay from the surrounding farms. You step out onto the tavern's threshold. The innkeeper follows and stands on the stoop a moment, looking out with you over the awakening village. The sun has just crested the thatched rooftops now, sending long rays slanting across the lane. The last puddles from yesterday's rain glint like pools of gold in the wheel ruts. A few townsfolk are visible in the distance, beginning their daily routines. A miller pushes open his shutters. A group of Dominican friars on foot pass quietly along the far road, their black and white habits distinct in the morning light. You turn to the innkeeper and clasp his hand in farewell. There is little need for flowery words. Both of you share an understanding that this brief stay has been something good in the lives of traveller and host alike. Safe travels, and may the road be kind to you, he says earnestly, and may God keep you and this tavern, you reply warmly. With a final nod and smile, you adjust your cloak, take hold of your walking stick, and step out fully into the lane. Your heart feels light, your body rejuvenated. A good rest, hearty food, and human kindness. These are the gifts you carry onward from the White Hart. Before departing the tavern's yard, you make your way to the small stable behind the building where your mare has spent the night. You find the stable boy, hair tousled with sleep but bright-eyed, already standing by your steed, which he has brushed down and saddled for the day. The boy grins and pats the horse's neck proudly, reporting that, "She's been well fed and watered, sir." You thank the lad kindly, pressing a small coin into his palm for his troubles, which makes his eyes widen in delight. Taking your mare's reins, you lead the gentle creature out of the stable and back toward the road where your journey continues. With renewed vigor, you set off down the village lane. The innkeeper waves once from the doorway, then retreats inside to tend to his morning duties. You hear the bar's bolt thud gently, though the door is left ajar to let in the fine weather. The White Hart signboard creaks softly in the breeze above you, displaying its proud emblem to the dawn. You raise a hand in a final grateful wave, then turn your face toward the open road ahead. The White Hart slips out of sight as you round a bend by the old village well, but it will never truly leave your mind. As you leave the village behind, the countryside opens up before you. Low mist clings to the hollows between gently rolling green hills, and the dawn sky blossoms from pearl grey to pastel rose. A lonely rooster crows yet again in some far-off farmstead, answered by the distant low of cattle being driven to pasture. In the village behind you, the little church bell completes its cheerful peal, marking prime, the first prayers of the new day. You guide your mare onto the main road, passing under the weathered stone cross that marks the crossroads at the edge of town. For a moment you halt there, inhaling the scent of dew-laden grass and wildflowers by the roadside. In the hedgerow, tiny sparrows flit and chitter, busy with their own morning tasks. All is calm and new. You tighten your cloak around your shoulders against the slight nip in the air, but inside you feel an unmistakable warmth. It's a brand new day, full of promise, and fortified by the comfort and rest you found at the White Hart. You feel ready to greet whatever adventures await beyond the next hill. As you prod your mare into an easy walk, you realize you are humming an old tavern tune without even thinking. Already, the simple pleasures of last night have woven themselves into your being. The road ahead unwinds invitingly under the strengthening sun, and you stride forward, and your horse strides forward beside you to meet it, comforted by the thought that whenever the road grows long or lonely, there will be other taverns, other warm hearths, and friendly smiles, waiting to welcome a weary traveller. You set out with confidence. This morning, you understand in your heart what it was really like to visit a medieval tavern, and more. It was to find sanctuary in a wandering life, a brief, shining chapter of fellowship and rest amid the journey. It was laughter shared with strangers who became friends for an evening, stories traded and savoured, and the simple human pleasures of good bread and warm ale. It was a place where the world's weary edges were softened by firelight, and one's burdens were lightened by kindness and camaraderie. In the tapestry of medieval life, taverns like the White Hart are shining threads, humble yet vital, offering fellowship and respite amid the long and uncertain roads of an earlier age. Travelling onward into the golden morning, you carry that understanding with you like a cherished treasure. The memory of the tavern, the clink of glasses, the murmur of voices, the glow of that welcoming doorway will travel with you now, a guiding star on even the longest of roads. And as the day unfolds, you find yourself already looking forward to the next time your path leads you to an inviting inn such as this one, a place where you know warmth, camaraderie, and comfort will await you with open arms.